Okay, today's daf we're going to be learning is daf Pei Gimel, reminding everyone if you haven't yet registered for the Siyum, you can register. There's lots of different options. There's Siyum on Zoom in English on Tuesday night next week, or Tuesday afternoon, or Tuesday in the middle, or Wednesday in the middle of the night, wherever you live. And Israel time, it'll be at night, and there'll be Siyumim around Israel, and there are a bunch happening in America. If you're part of community WhatsApp groups, you could keep posted there on what's happening. Okay, today's daf is sponsored by Sari Esterman in memory of her aunt Miriam Bat Yosef HaKohen. And today's daf is dedicated by Debbie and Yossi Gvir to their son Eliav and his wife Noya on becoming parents. Celebrating the Shabbat Brit together was very meaningful. You hear it son that Shachar Yosef will always reach out to Hashem in the spirit of the pasuk that his parents related to in choosing his name from Yeshayahu, chapter Nafshi Viticha Balayla Afruchi Ashacharecha, coupled with the memory of Debbie's father, Yosef Ginsburg, Zichrono Livracha, a unique and loving individual who epitomized the concept of Torah and Mada and beyond. Okay, with that, we will get started with our daf. We have a question that from yesterday, if you remember, there was a debate about a case where a woman takes a vow on 2 loaves of bread. One is considered affliction for her, one is not. In other words, one, again, the basic, according to most commentaries, it's that one is really good bread and one is really not good bread, and therefore not eating it is not such a big deal. If he nullifies one, does he nullify both? Okay, so we saw that Shmuel, Rav Yehuda quoted in the name of Shmuel, both are nullified. There's no such thing as partial. And then we saw that Rabbi Yochanan disagreed, and Rav Asi quoted Rabbi Yochanan. The second version, though, was that there was a discussion. And Rav Asi asked Rabbi Yochanan, what's the situation? And Rabbi Yochanan answered, only one is nullified and the other is not. Okay? To which we have an etive. Okay, we're starting now at the bottom of Pei Bet and Bet. We're going to have the basic structure is we're going to have 2 questions. One is from a Mishna in Nazir, and the next is from a braita in Nazir. And we're going to resolve the difficulties. And then within the first difficulty, when we have the resolution, we're going to get off on a big tangent. Okay, I made a study guide today, and you could kind of see the structure from the study guide. It helps. What I try to do with the study guides is help you see the structure. So basically, you're going to have Rabbi Yochanan's answer, then we're going to have a difficulty with it, and then a resolution, and then a whole side developing there. And then we're going to go back and have another etive, which is going to be another question. That's going to be already at the bottom of Amud Aleph. It's going to be the second question on Rabbi Yochanan, and that will be resolved as well. So let's start with our first source. Haisha shenadra b'nazir. So a woman makes a vow to be a Nazirah. You can always remember, right? Women can be Nazirim. This says so clearly in the Torah. Isha, man or woman. She decides to become a Nazir. So after she takes on her Nazirut, this would be true for a man or a woman, they start drinking wine, or they become impure to dead people, which is forbidden. She's going to get 40 lashes. Okay? That's what you get. You get lashes for doing that. But now you know why they're talking about a woman. If the husband nullifies her vow, vihilo yada, here you have a very interesting situation. She didn't even know that he got rid of her neder. And here's a great question. She thinks she's a Nazir, and she goes against it, and she does things that are forbidden. But in fact, she's not, because her husband undid her vow, and she didn't even know about it. So even though you might think she thinks she's doing something wrong, and therefore maybe it is considered a sin, well, you don't get lashes for this because it's not really a sin, because he already undid her vows of Nazirut. To which the Gemara says, but wait a minute, what's the story with Nazirut? Is it Inui Nefesh? Like, why is he allowed to nullify her neder? Part of it is Inui Nefesh, but part of it is not really Inui Nefesh. We're going to see this right now. Iyamar. Now, if you say that he can nullify vows that have to do with Inoi Nefesh, but if there's part that's Inoi Nefesh and part that's not Inoi Nefesh, part that's not difficult for her at all to refrain from, then, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, he only nullifies part of it, then Dilma Minayayin Latzara Heperla, Minachartzanu Minazag Lo Heperla. Maybe the wine was nullified, because to refrain from drinking wine, we could see is difficult. But to refrain from eating the grape pits and the skins, That's not, it's not the skins. I forget what the translations of these are, if you want to help me, but one is the skins and one is I forget. But basically, those are things that are not exactly, it is the pits. Okay, I thought maybe it was the pits, but I wasn't sure. But so let's assume it's the grape pits and the grape skins. Someone can correct me if we're wrong. In any case, the point, or the seeds, right? This pits, the seeds. Okay, so now basically we have this issue. It's not exactly difficult for her to refrain from them. So theoretically, that part of the neder remember, Nazirut is a type of vow. That part of the vow shouldn't be nullified. Now you might say, what else? Well, also not being impure to dead people is not exactly difficult to refrain from or affliction. We're going to get back to that at the end. That's going to be part of the second question. Right now, they're focusing on the chartzan and the zag. Okay, in the Torah, it says you can't have wine, anything made from grapes, even the pits and the skins. So therefore, it seems like that should still be forbidden. So the Mishna should have said, but if she eats the seeds and the pits, the seeds and the skins, then theoretically she should get lashes because that part isn't nullified. So now they say, right, Taha lo eat latzara, there's no tzal, this is bogatar bayim, she should get lashes for that. So I'm a Rav Yosef, and this is what's going to get us off on a big tangent here. He says, Ein nazirut l'chatzaim. This is a unique law by Nazir. Don't start quoting me from Nazir when you're asking me against this 2 loaves of bread question, because the 2 loaves of bread are 2 separate things that can be treated independently. So we can nullify one and not the other. Again, that was the debate. Can they be treated separately or not? But Rabbi Yochanan thought they can be treated separately. But Nazirut is a one-package deal. You can't undo part of the Nazirut. You're either a Nazir for the whole thing or you're a Nazir for nothing. Okay? So there's no such thing. By the way, there's a ton of Iddic debate about this. If I say I'm going to be a Nazir, only not to drink wine, but I use the word Nazir. And if I just said I'm not going to drink wine, okay, that's just a vow not to drink wine. But if I say I'm going to be a Nazirah, okay, the female form, I'm going to be a Nazirah, but I am going to drink wine, or I'm going to be a Nazirah, but I am going to become impure to dead people. So generally, well, I shouldn't say the impure to dead people. The part of the reason why they don't ask this question right now is some people say there is this Nazirut of Shimshon, which is actually you can become impure to dead people. That's a unique thing, and maybe whatever. I'm not going to get into all that, but that's how they answer a question later on. We're going to talk about. But in any case, ein nazirut l'chatzaim means you can't take on partial nazirut. So there's a ton of Iddic debate. Let's say I said I'm going to be a nazirah for part of nazirut, okay, and I say I'm only doing this, I'm not doing that. So there's a debate. Since everyone agrees ein nazirut l'chatzaim, the question is, does that mean I'm a full nazir, even though I said except for this? Or does it mean I'm nothing? Because there is no such thing as being a Nazirah. So that we'll get to in Nazir. In any case, Rav Yosef says, this is a unique law by Nazirut, which is if the husband nullifies part, he then nullifies the whole thing because it goes as a one package deal. Therefore, it's not a question. You can't ask me from Nazir. But once he makes this statement, Abaye infers something from what he says, which take it or leave it, whether you think this is an inference or not. But Abaye has a problem with the inference from what Rav Yosef said. And as I said, we're going off on a total tangent now off of our topic. Because again, our topic is difficulty on Rabbi Yochanan, who said you can nullify one loaf and not the other, even though it was all one vow. Difficulty by Nazir. Nazir is not a difficulty, it's a unique halacha by Nazir. So I'm going to Abaye. Ha korban l'chatzin nazirut ika. You said there's no nazirut l'chatzaim, which sounds like what you're saying is, and some people say it's because he didn't say ein chatzaim when it comes to Nazir in general, but instead of saying that, he said you can't take upon nazirut b'chatzaim. It sounds like, but if you were a Nazir for part of the time, you would actually have to bring the sacrifices. Okay, why he infers this is a good question, but this is his inference. Okay, so like I said, take it or leave it, but that's what he infers because he says ein nazirut l'chatzaim. It makes it sound like there's no nazirut for chatzaim, but there could be korbanot l'chatzaim, which would mean what? And basically he says that's absurd. So what it would mean is different opinion among commentaries, but we'll go with the basic, which it means, let's say a woman took upon Nazirut. She was a Nazir for 15 days. And then the husband came and nullified her Nazirut. She would have to bring, he's saying, it sounds like what you're saying is, since she was a Nazir for part of the time, she would have to bring the sacrifices for it. Okay, or let's say she already separated her sacrifices and then he nullified her vow, then maybe she would have to bring them. Okay, different ways of understanding it, but Abaye says, according to what you're saying, it would sound like there's Nazir, there ain't Nazirut l'chatzaim, but there would be korbanot l'chatzaim. And he basically says that's ridiculous. Nobody thinks that if you're a Nazir for part of the time, you'd have to bring sacrifices. So El Amar Abaye corrects Rav Yosef and says, you should have said like this, ein Nazirut l'chatzaim ve'ein korban l'chatzaim. Okay, we could have ended here. That would have been very clear. Okay, there's no Nazirut, there's no korban. However, now they bring a question on Abaye. So what happened was Abaye inferred something for Rav Yosef and brought a question. Now they're going to question Abaye and say, but Meitive, I'm going to bring a braita to disagree with you. There was a woman who took on Nazirut. There's a debate about whether, and then she became impure, or maybe she didn't become impure, but let's say she finished counting her days. She designates her animal. Now you actually have to bring 3 korbanot. Okay, both if you became impure as a Nazir and if you were a regular Nazir and finished your Nazirut. So again, it's not clear which one we're talking about here. And then he nullifies her Nazirut before she brings the sacrifices. She brings the chatata, but she doesn't bring the olata. Now, here it's strange. She brings one of the korbanot. Now, why does she bring this chatata if there's no nazirut for chatzi, and korban l'chatzi nazirut? What they're basically saying is that you're saying there's no korban l'chatzi nazirut, but it seems like there is, because she actually brings the chatata. Okay, so now they say, so it sounds like, and that's why you're complaining that he said "En korban l'chatzi nazirut." It sounds like there is korban l'chatzi nazirut. So now they say, wait. In order to respond, we're going to respond with a counter question. Ve'ela mai yesh korban l'chatzi nazirut. What you're trying to say? Okay, whether it's Abaye responding or the Gemara responding, but you're trying to say against Abaye, there is korban l'chatzi nazirut based on the fact that we bring the chatata off. So they say, Yesh korban l'chatzi nazirut. If there really is korban l'chatzi nazirut, shalosh behemot ba'ilatuye. It's not exactly behemot, animals really including birds, but it should have been 3 because there's 3 sacrifices that go with. Again, depending on whether it's tumah or whether it's Nazir, but right, a Nazir that became impure, a Nazir that finished their days. But either way, it's 3. Okay, there's 3 sacrifices to bring. So if you really would bring korban l'chatzi nazirut, there would be 3. So basically, they're proving there is really no korban l'chatzi nazirut, but what do you have to explain, right? So bayatu, what would you bring? A chatat, an ola, and a shlamim. Okay, now, that's if you actually finished your nazirut, not if you were impure. Ela la'olam en korban l'chatzi nazirut. So that proves there really is no korban. V'chatat of dematya mishum dechatat ala safek. In other words, really, there's no korban. However, the chatata of is a unique halacha. Normally, you're not allowed to bring an animal, any kind of bird, animal sacrifice, mishum safek, if you're not sure. Okay, why not? Because, and that's why we don't bring korban l'chatzi nazirut, because there's a bit of a safek here. That right. Remember also, we say megaz guy is when the husband is mayfair, he kind of cuts it at the spot. Okay, and basically, from there on in, there is no nazirut. On the other hand, she was a nazirah for part of the time. And if you remember, there's this whole question, why did she bring a chatat? Some people explain, right? Why did she bring a chatat? Because she never should have vowed against wine. So while the other sacrifices are no longer applicable, because ein korban l'chatzi nazirut, this is a unique halacha by the chatat ha'of. Okay, normally you're not sure you're supposed to bring a korban or not, you don't bring it, because that's called chulin la'azara. There's some situations where you can bring mistafek, you could say either it'll be this or it will be that. Like if you could bring an animal, you could, like, for example, there's korban ola that you're obligated to bring, and there's korban ola that you can bring voluntarily. And let's say an olat ha'of is done the same way, whether it's voluntary or obligatory. So you could bring it saying, if it's this, then this, if it's that, it's that. Chatada of a sin offering, you can't bring as a voluntary offering. But there's a unique halacha learned out in Nazir. When we get there, we'll see where they learned it out from. But learned out in Masechet Nazir, there's a unique halacha by the chatada of that you can bring it mishum safek. Okay? Even if you're not sure you're supposed to bring it, you're allowed to bring it anyway. That's a unique halacha by chatada of, which right now we'll just accept and we'll get to it when we get to it. Because of that, this chatada of is a unique halacha by Nazir, and that you bring anyway. But don't question Abaye and say, yesh korban lechatzi nazirut, by saying you bring the chatada of, because that's a unique halacha of one thing that you can actually bring out of a doubt, even though you're not sure you need to bring it. And because of that, that's why she brings it. But she doesn't bring the other sacrifices because really there's no korban le-nazir. Okay, lechatzi nazirut. So now we go back to where we started. So let's just review. Rav Asi asked Rabbi Yochanan a question about the two kikarot. Rabbi Yochanan answered, he nullifies one, not the other. We questioned from Nazir. We said, oh, don't question from Nazir. Rav Yosef answered, ein korban lechatzi nazirut. I'm sorry, ein nazirut lechatzain, which meant there's no such thing as partial nazirut, which is as soon as he nullifies part, he nullifies the whole thing, even though it's not all inoi nefesh. But that's a unique halacha for Nazir. You can't learn there to regular Nedarim. From there, we got up on this whole tangent. Abaye said, what do you mean? Yesh ein nazirut lechatzaim, but you imply that there's korban lechatzaim, there's no such thing. To which Abaye said, really, there is no such thing. To which they questioned him and said, what do you mean? What about the chatada of? Say, oh, the chatada of, the sin offering, the sin bird offering by Nazir, she's going to bring, even if she's a partial Nazirah, right? She was only for some of the time. That's a unique halacha, can't learn from it. It's like the same idea as we said before. That's something that's brought out of a doubt. The only korban you could bring out of a doubt. That's why she brings it. But really, in general, there isn't korban for partial Nazirut. Okay, that was a whole aside. Now we're back to our main topic. And we're going to bring another question against Rabbi Yochanan's statement here. Eitive. And here's a braita. Haisha shenadra b'nazir v'nitmet. So you have a woman who took upon Nazirut. It's a braita. She became impure. So Nazir, who becomes impure, right, is supposed to bring a whole set of sacrifices. But achar kach hefer labala. However, he nullified her Nazirut at that point. Miviyah chatat ha'of ve'en miviyah olat ha'of. As we said before, right, she brings this chatat ha'of, but she doesn't bring the olat ha'of. Now, iyamart, it's going to be the same type of question as before. Iyamart mefer le'mitaneh ve'en mefer l'she'en mitaneh. If we're going to say only part of her Nazirut is nullified because only part of it was inoi nefesh and the other part wasn't inoi nefesh, and here we're going to see, we're talking this time about the tumat made. Dilma miyayin di'ilatzara, we're now moving to Amud Bet, maybe wine, which is difficult for her to refrain from drinking, heferla. Mi tumat made to late latzara, lo heferla. But maybe from tumat made, from being impure to dead people, which is another thing a Nazir can't do, which isn't really inoi nefesh at all, maybe lo heferla, which would mean she's still a Nazir, and maybe she would bring all her sacrifices. Now, it's the same type question as before, right? Even though it's a different case. There it was about her getting punished, and here it's about her bringing sacrifices. But either which way, it's very strange because the Gemara, this assumes that we forgot the answer from before, right? Because what was the answer we already said? Ein nazirut l'chatzain. There's no such thing as partial nazirut. So why doesn't the Gemara say that here? It's a little strange. The Gemara is not going to answer that question here. In the end, the Gemara is going to say, refraining from going to a cemetery or being in contact with dead people is actually inoi nefesh. That's the way they're going to answer it. Why they don't answer it the other way is a good question, right? It would have been very simple to bring Rav Yosef here and say, ein nazirut l'chatzain. So one answer is what I mentioned before about nazirut shimshon, which is, since there's a type of nazirut that you could separate, like you could say, I want to be a Nazir shimshon. We're going to get into all this when we get to Masechet Nazir, which is coming up very soon. There's such a thing that you could become impure to dead people. But probably a better answer, which you often see in Sugyot, which is you could have answered that, but they have a different answer, so they're answering with their other answer, okay? It's a better answer to say this actually is the Imur Nefesh, okay? As opposed to saying this is unique halacha by Nazirut. I don't know if it's a better answer, but it's another answer. So now the Gemara is going to quote something that we've seen already twice in Ketubot and in Moed Katan. It's a very interesting comment. which is tuma meit nami eat latzava. Okay, we didn't say it in those words, but now you'll see in a minute what we saw already, which is refraining from having contact with dead people is actually also inui nefesh. It's suffering, okay, affliction of your soul. Dichtiv, how do we know? It says in a pasuk in Kohelet, I'll read the whole pasuk. Tov lalechet al beit evel, milechet al beit mishtet. It's one of the very famous pasukim in Kohelet. Better to go to a house of avelim, a mourner's house, rather than to go to a celebratory party, something like that. Why? Ba'asher hu sof kol adam, because this is the end of all men. Everyone will die. V'achai yitena libo. And the one who's alive should take this to heart. So what does it mean, v'achai yitena libo? V'tanya haya Rabbi Meir omer, he darshan that pasuk, Rabbi Meir. My dechtiv v'achai yiten elibo. What does that mean? Di yispod yispedun le, di yivkun yivkiyun le, di yikbar yikberun le. You should take this to heart. What should you take to heart? Well, if you go eulogize people, they will eulogize you. If you cry for people, they will cry for you. If you bury people, they will bury you. So that means that if she refrains from becoming impure to dead people, she's actually causing affliction to herself, because either, you can look at this in two ways. Either if she doesn't do it, other people won't do it for her, or you might view it a little differently, which is if she doesn't go, she might be worried. What's the inui nefesh? It's that she's going to worry that people won't take care of her when she dies. And that itself is going to be affliction, right? To be worried all your life that no one's going to come and bury me. No one's going to come and eulogize me. No one's going to come and cry for me when I die. That's going to be very hard for her. So therefore, if she refrained from going to become impure to dead people, that is actually causing her affliction. Now, how does this relate? Someone asked me last time about how does this relate to what we always say about chesed shalamet, right? When we deal with dead people, that's chesed shalamet because we're not expecting anything in return. And this is basically saying the opposite, that we are expecting something in return, because if we do this, they will help us. So I wondered if in the time of Rabbi Meir, maybe people weren't so good about doing eulogies for people, and he was trying to encourage people by saying, you better do for others because, right, and that maybe it was a way of encouraging people. And not that it's necessarily true, but it's also a natural feeling that and again, for her, this might be, she's worried that people might think this about, that people might not take care of her. But anyway, there's ways to think about this. And it does, definitely raise a bit of a question about this idea of chesed shalamet, about those people who take care of the dead or doing it without any expectations, things in return. And, anyway, it could be some and some. So basically, the second question could have been answered, and that's why the entire thing is nullified. But in the end, they answer it with a better answer, which is, this is actually not comparable in the slightest to our case, not because it's Nazir and that's regular vows, which don't have all the same criteria as Nazir, but because this is actually inui nefesh as well. Okay, the tumat meit is also inui nefesh, and that we prove from Rabbi Meir. New Mishna. If you remember, we're still now in Rabbi Yosef. All these things that Rabbi Yosef thinks are not inui nefesh, and therefore the husband can't nullify them. Or again, it's a question with all these things whether he can't nullify. Maybe they're dvarim shebeino lebeina, but this doesn't seem to be beino lebeina. Okay, the Gemara, by the way, is going to have a lot of issues understanding this first line. So I'm going to try to explain it in one way, but we're going to raise all different ways of understanding it. It's a little hard to explain now because it's already open. It's going to be open to parshanut. We're going to have 3 different ways of reading this first line in the Mishnah, but I'll read it the way I think you would simply read this, which is, she says, I will not benefit from people of the world, anybody. You would think he'd be able to be made for. That's inui nefesh, right? He cannot nullify, presumably, again, it's not clear, possibly, I'll say, possibly because maybe the husband is not included in briot. When she says the whole world, she means the whole world except for her husband, because obviously she wouldn't include him with everybody else. Now, this seems to be a different reason, which is since she can't necessarily benefit from people and therefore can't eat any food, what she's going to eat, that's pretty much, nefesh, except that she can take all the gifts that are left for the poor people in the fields, the things people drop, the things people forget behind, the things, the corner of their fields that they leave over. She can take all those things, so she has what to eat, so therefore it's not inui nefesh. So the connection between those two, we're going to have to resolve. We'll talk about the difficulty when we get to the Gemara. Kohanim Levites. If she says no Kohen or Levi is going to be able to benefit from me, now what's the problem? You have to give Truma to Masrot. So what's she supposed to do with that? Those are gifts to the Kohanim. How can she give them to them if she basically forbade them from benefiting? Yitzlu al korcham. They can come into her field and take them. Why are they allowed to take them? Because they're not really hers. Just like by the way, I didn't explain. Leket shichan peah. Why can she get those if she said I won't benefit from anyone? Because they don't belong to anyone. They're ownerless. Likewise, when she separates her truma to maaser, they no longer belong to her. As soon as she separates truma, it's as if it's in the domain of a Kohen. It's not in any particular Kohen, but it belongs to Kohanim. So the Kohanim or the Leviim, when it comes to their maaser, can just come in and take it because it's not hers to give out. But if she says Kohanim elu, uleviim elu nenimli, but if she points to a few specific Kohanim and a few specific Leviim and say, I don't want to benefit from you, then yitzlu acherim. They can't come and take it. Why? Because if you remember, we've learned this many times that when it comes to Truma Maaser, you can do what's called Tovat Hana'ah. You can give to someone in particular. You can decide who you want to give it to. It's not like a Kohen can come and take it from you. You can decide who you want to give it to because that gives you benefit. If I give a Kohen, again, back to this tit for tat. If I give a Kohen, so he might do me a favor later because he knows I always give him my Truma Maaser. So it's in my best interest to choose. So if I said a few of them are forbidden, but these other ones aren't, I get to choose who I want to give it to. No one can come and take my stuff. And of course, the ones who can't benefit from me, I will not be able to, I can give it to them and they can't take from me. Now let's go back to the first line. The Gemara says, Alma, if you look at the first line, the first few words, Konam shani nehene lebriot, eino yachol lafer. Why can't he nullify that vow? Because she can still benefit from him. Right? So that's what the Gemara assumes. Alma, therefore, efshari de mitzanami delay. Sounds like he can sustain her, which means michlal dibal la bichlal briotu. Okay, this is a line you can make some jokes about, but it means her husband is not part of the human race. Okay, basically, when she says all humans, she doesn't mean her husband. Okay, that's the idea. Right? I don't mean to make jokes, but right. Anyway, the point is, what she really meant was everyone else except my husband. When she says all the world, she doesn't mean her husband, which is why he can't nullify it because she has food to eat because her husband will give her food. But then the next line says, which sounds like the reason why he can't nullify the vow is why? Because she has the foods that people leave in the fields. And that's the reason why, not because of the husband. These things seem to contradict. It sounds like, why is she eating the gifts from the poor for the poor people? Because she's poor, because she can't benefit from her husband, she can't benefit from anybody. And from here you can infer that she does consider her husband part of all humans. When she says all humans, I won't benefit from, she includes her husband in that. And it's only because she can get the leket shechan pe'ah, that's all the gifts that are given to the poor. That's the reason why he can't nullify the vow, because she has what to eat, not from her husband. So we have these two lines seeming to say opposite things about whether her husband is included or not included in the word brio. When she says all people, does she mean her husband or does she not mean her husband? So we're going to have three different ways of reading this Mishnah, and that's all we're going to see today. Amar Ula. La'olam, and in the Bachli he adds the word, so I'm going to add the word Ba'al la bichlal briotu. Okay, basically the first option of Ula is to say, and this is all charted out on the sheet, which is the husband is not part of the brio. Okay, when she says, I will not benefit from everyone, she means everyone except my husband. Vowed, and what about the second part? Additionally, in other words, there's two reasons why he can't nullify this vow. One is she can eat from him. Two is, so there's two reasons why he can't nullify. One is because she can eat from him. And two is, let's say he runs out of food and he has nothing to provide for her, she can get from the food for the poor people. So she's covered either way. So those are two reasons why. That's how Ula reads the Mishnah, as two separate reasons why he is not allowed to nullify that vow. Rava Amar, la'olam ba'al bichlal briotu, opposite. When she says briot, she means her husband as well. And matam kamal, the second line is coming to give the reason for the first line. If she says, I won't benefit from all people, that includes her husband. Ein yachol lahafer, why can't he nullify that vow then if she has nowhere to eat? Why not? Because while she can't eat from him and she can't eat from anybody else, she can go take the stuff that's ownerless in the fields that was left for the poor. So then the opposite interpretation has nothing to do with the husband. The husband is actually, she can't benefit from him at all. When she says briot, she means to include her husband as well. Rav Nachman Amal, he goes back to the first one, but modifies it a little bit. He agrees with the first opinion, Ula, that the husband is not included in the term everyone. When she says, I will not benefit from everyone, she doesn't mean her husband. But he doesn't understand the second part as another reason, because of the leket shechan pe'ah. He understands it as a different scenario. There's two different scenarios of a married woman. One is she stays married, and then she's allowed to benefit from her husband always, so there's no problem. And hachi katane, this is the second part, nitgarsha. But another reason why he can't be made for, you might say, but what if down the road he divorces her? Then she'll have no way to eat. And then theoretically, he should be able to nullify it now, because down the road, this will be idui nefesh if he divorces her. But no, it's not. Because if he divorces her, she still has an alternative. So her situation now, it's not idui nefesh. And even in the future, if he were to divorce her, it's also not idui nefesh. And that's why the husband can't nullify, because down the road, she could theoretically be eating leket shechan pe'ah, and she'll have what to eat no matter what, whether she's married or whether she's divorced. So we saw three ways of understanding this. Two hold that when she says everyone, she doesn't mean her husband. Others hold, right, Rava holds, when she says everyone, she does include her husband. And the real reason is because of the leket shechan pe'ah. Whereas according to the other two, it's either an additional reason or a different situation. Married, divorced. Okay, so with that, we explained at least the first part of our Mishnah, although we will continue with the sugya tomorrow. Rava is going to question Rav Nachman, which was the third opinion, right? Rava had the second opinion. He's going to raise a question against Rav Nachman, and we'll see where the sugya goes from there. Wishing everybody a great day, and meet up tomorrow. Don't forget to register for the siyum.